This week on BadgerPod NerdCast, the Badgers discuss Disney's Maleficent, Sailor Moon, social justice warriors attack Captain America, and the accusation that Archie Comics CEO Nancy Silvercl practiced gender discrimination against her male staff. Be sure to tune in.
Hello, and welcome to BadgerPod NerdCast. Today we have Allison Tiemann, Crystal Garcia, Jess Kay, we have Dr. Remender Cam here, and Karen Strawn. Welcome, guys.
Welcome. Wait, I'm supposed to say hi, yes. Thank you for the welcome.
Hi.
Hello.
Jess, are you there?
Hi there.
Woo! Mike,
everyone.
Say that again, Mike. I didn't hear it.
Yeah, my name's Mike, by the way. It's Mike from now on. It's easier to say than Dr. Random Cam.
Yeah,
okay.
Dr. Remender Cam is quite the mouthful.
Well, we have some really great topics today. I'm really excited. We've got Captain America. We've got We've got the co-CEO of Archie Comics starting some stuff, and we've got Maleficent and Sailor Moon. So we'll dive right in.
Actually, before we get into it, are we going to go cover the TumblrCon?
Oh gosh, DashCon.
Right.
There's not much you can do but gloat, really, and that's in poor taste.
Okay, well when are we ever in good taste, though, Mike?
All I'm gonna say is, if you're gonna have a ball pit and a bouncy house, at least have a nice one. Okay, you have. I mean, I think they had, what was it, like something like 1,000 people there. That's not enough room. It's basically like a little pool that they just filled with balls, like a small like kiddie pool that they shoved full of a bunch of balls, and that's not sufficient enough.
In the middle
only
of a
one
giant
hour,
empty room.
And you only have 1 hour in the ball pit. That is simply not acceptable.
It's a little bit North Korea, isn't it? Enjoy yourself.
Yeah, you and if you're going to, and forgive us, we'll just give you another hour in the ball pit because we couldn't get the people from Night Vale or Steam Power Giraffe to show up.
Okay, so they actually got 1,000 people?
Yeah, but the thing about it is they were expecting 7,000, so things looked a little bit empty.
For first year con?
Yeah, I don't know if it was that many people altogether, but yeah, it was a first year con, and the people didn't know what they were doing. They messed up massively. They couldn't get the funds together to actually pay the people from Welcome to Night Vale, who had set up for a panel. They couldn't pay them properly, so they just walked. It was kind of a clusterfuck.
Well, I mean, like 1,000 is actually pretty good for a first-time con, but you have to question their kind of assumption that they were going to have 7,000 people there, that they were going to expect 7,000 people.
For first year, yeah.
Yeah, for a first-year con, especially, granted, like, okay, especially considering the demographic in question, which is Tumblr. Right? Okay, so these are people who are already kind of flaky and already kind of flighty and expect things to be, handed to them and not have to struggle and maybe not have to pay for their tickets and pay for their transportation because that would be oppression and all of those things, right? I think that and just the level of delusion thinking that your very first annual conference is going to attract 7,000 people. That is perfectly in keeping with Tumblr too.
Well, 1,000, yeah, like you said, it's actually 1,000 is pretty good.
Yeah,
but
a lot of them walked out though. A lot of them just walked out upon arriving. They're like, you know what? Forget it.
Well, but the thing is that if you have 1,000 people come and then they vow to tell everyone not to come and not come back, that is sort of a massive failure. So, I mean, what they should have done is aimed for fewer people, secured cheaper entertainment or entertainment that was willing to go for just the exposure, and put a smaller con on and make it something people would want to go back for. I mean, at the very least, like a day where you're having a party with your friends is something that you would be willing to go back for to meet up with your friends. But it sounds like they really went really overstretched themselves and thus failed.
They'd be better off just trying to get something like 200 people and then just doing a very, very small kind of con. I mean, I've actually heard of people doing very, very small scale anime cons with a lot of dedicated cosplayers and just doing it at a, small venue and that being rather successful. And, that's, like I said, that would be pretty good.
Well, I mean,
that would be fine.
Yeah, it would have been perfectly adequate, and the amount of funds that they were, it sounds like they could put
$17,000
at least. Okay, so they could have put on a very
they got $17,000 at the least. By the end, I think they accumulated something in the ballpark of $30,000, and I'm not sure what that was after fees and everything.
Okay, so I mean, that could have done a reasonably decent con for 1,000 people. Like that, there's no excuse here.
No.
This is either it's incredible incompetence and nobody is pocketing any money because it's just been squandered, or somebody is all the way to the bank.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So.
Yeah, but it's not. Yeah, it's a complete clusterfuck, but there's not much more to do, like Mike said, than gloat. Ha ha ha, point fingers, and gloat at the Tumblr.
Yeah, I mean, it's just sad. All right, let's go to Captain America, I guess. Everybody ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yes.
All right, Rick Remender is called a rape apologist. Captain America writer Rick Remender recently came under fire after a misunderstanding about a series of panels portraying a possible sex scene between Captain Falcon and Jet Zola. What was obviously the actions of two consenting adults became an act of statutory rape after a man on Tumblr made a post stating that the writer had turned Captain Falcon into a rapist, and that Jet Zola had only been 14 and not at least 23, as it had been stated in the panels before the implied encounter. The post in question received 1,868 notes in total, and the result of which had several people demanding that Rick Remender be fired for portraying underage sex and racial stereotypes. Both claims were entirely untrue, as the scene portrayed by Jet Zola serving Falcon wine and the two waking up in bed together the next morning. Sorry, as it portrayed the two. Yeah, anyway. The two consenting adults had a few drinks and went to bed. It was nothing more and nothing less. Many had not read the previous panel stating the age of Jet Zola, and that she had had some wine on her 23rd birthday. So they of course made a mess of it, creating Twitter campaigns and articles demanding that he be kicked from the project. What is most disturbing in all this is not that social justice warriors are doing what they're good at, it's more that their stupidity knows no bounds, and that nothing is beyond their reach. Not nerd culture, and not even the sex lives of superheroes. So perhaps it's only a matter of time before they sanitize it like everything else. Discuss. Guys? Yeah, it was, okay, from what I understand, what happened was Captain Falcon, I forget what his name is, James Gino? His civilian name? Anyway, Captain Falcon and Jet Zola are they're drinking some wine, and he's like, no, just one glass, and she's like, come on. And the next panels following after showed them waking up in bed together the next morning, and he's got a hangover. But I guess, and she mentions that she'd had that same wine on her 23rd birthday, implying that she's either older than 23 or at least 23.
And that's an obviously clunky bit of writing. People don't say, oh, the 23rd birthday. Obviously put it in there to make sure no one thought it was an underage sex scene. To no fucking avail.
Yep. And I guess, see, here's the thing, though. They're trying to say that it's racial stereotypes or whatever. I think that maybe the person who is commenting on this is seeing something that simply is not there, mainly because it's a black man having sex with a white woman.
Well,
I don't know.
I think that the instant leap from two adults have a glass of wine, wake up together the next morning, we're not even sure whether anything happened or whether they just crashed, right, and maybe snuggled, okay? We don't even know whether they had sex, right? And the instant assumption on the part of that person who is so absolutely appalled at the negative stereotypes about black people, the first assumption that they have is that that black man raped that girl.
Well,
right? That's saying more about their own assumptions about black men. And
exactly.
Frankly, you know, whatever assumptions we might have as far as sexuality about black men, they're the assumptions that we have about all men. Yes, we have them a little bit more. Black men are absolutely more likely than white men, just judging by the population numbers, right? Way more likely to be accused of rape by a white woman than a white man is, right? But at the same time, these are not just things that are attached to race. They're attached to masculinity. They're attached to maleness. These are not just racial issues. They're gender issues. And the fact that this person is all upset about the negative stereotypes about black men, when I don't think that would have even been an issue if Captain Falcon was a white guy. There would not have been any kind of, oh, it's about stereotypes. No, it would simply have been about he victimized her in some, right?
But I'd like to point something out here. Judging from what I read of it and Rachel's recap, if this was a man pushing alcohol on a woman and then the implication that they then had sex, Tumblr would have said that he raped her, or in this case, she raped him, since she was the one who was pushing alcohol on him.
Yeah.
And that completely, like, that went right over their heads. They didn't even notice that one. And the other thing I wanted to point out was, I mean, this is just a situation where it's made very clear that the woman is of age, and also that, part of the problem that these social justice warriors were having was that she was originally 14, and it was apparently only a few weeks ago in this particular storyline, but she's in a different dimension where apparently they age differently, or more time elapses in that dimension than this one, or whatever, but she was 23. And then they're also going into this whole thing about how it just doesn't look, that there's some sort of secret ebophilia going on, because the writers really want us all to think that she's 14, even though they explicitly stated that she's 23, and the time difference and the dimensions and everything.
I just where these Tumblr feminists have been this whole time that we're running reruns of not Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Voyager, right? Because of Kes and that, I forget, the Keebler elf dude, right? Because Kes was like, what, 2.5 or something years old when she died, or 3 years old or something like that. Like they only lived for a few years in her race, right? Yeah. And he was like Neelix dude. He was like her grandfather or something, right? Like where were they then? How come they're not screaming about it now?
Well, I maybe it's too old for them. Like, I mean, we're talking about people who are, what, 16, 17, 18?
Where were they with the whole Renesmee thing from fucking Twilight? She's she's like 3 months old or something, and she's like fully grown, and there's the whole crazy, creepy thing going on between her and Jacob because he's imprinted on her. But they like Twilight, so they're conspicuously fucking silent.
There have been women who have actually come out and criticized Twilight. Some of them are self-proclaimed feminists, criticized it for putting the idea in young women's heads that the most important thing is to have a boyfriend, dealing with Edward's stalkery behavior. You know, he breaks into her house and watches her while she sleeps, she's 16, he's like 800. Isn't that a little bit weird, right?
100 actually, but
whatever, 80 something or whatever, it is, right? You know, like that. I never read the books, so I don't know. But you know, like there have been
I didn't read it either, but
criticisms of that book, just like there have been legitimate criticisms from feminists about 50 Shades of Grey and all kinds of other stuff. But I think one of the main things about those criticisms is they don't actually identify the culprit. And the culprit is actually just how many, many women are. And it's not about the culture imposing these beliefs and these behaviors and attitudes on them. It's not necessarily about how girls are told that having a boyfriend is the most important thing. I think anybody who's 16, 17, 18 years old, their hormones are raging. They're just exiting puberty. They are now at their prime fertility, whether they're male or female, right? And of course, that's going to be a hugely important thing for them, right? Just biologically, right? Hormonally. So I think that they're misidentifying the culprit. It's not necessarily the culture. I think the culture follows what we are rather than us following the culture in that way, in those deeply primal ways, right? So, you know, I have seen some criticisms by feminists of these particular issues. That doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't going to pull in Anita Sarkeesian and say, remember, even if you find some aspects of a given piece of media problematic, that doesn't mean you can't enjoy them.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I've actually seen at one point, they went so crazy about Twilight, they said that the very act of criticizing it was anti-feminist. I'm like, are you serious? But yeah, I guess we should move on to the Archie thing, unless anybody else has any comments.
I wish that they would actually put their sights on feminist apologists for underage, women exploiting underage boys. I wish they would put this fever into something that actually is meaningful, but they won't. So let's move on.
Well, because it's accepted, right? It's accepted culturally, right? So they're okay with it. It's just a status quo.
Well, we probably should move on to Maleficent, or the other one, the kilt.
Oh gosh, this chick,
Nancy Silvercl.
I can't pronounce this name. Nancy
Silberkleit.
Silberkleit. Silberkleit.
It might as well be. Come on.
So from now on, despite what I've written, her name is Nancy Silvercl.
Okay.
So okay.
Nancy established.
Yeah, I know. Nancy Silverkleit, accused of gender discrimination. I can't pronounce this name. Archie Comics co-CEO Nancy Silverkleit has been accused of gender discrimination. 5 male employees filed a lawsuit citing what they felt was discriminatory behavior on the part of the CEO. The employees state that she used her gender as a weapon. The word penis quote, the word penis became somewhat of a campaign slogan and her preferred method of referring to employees in lieu of their names, unquote. The new filing says. The employees described threatening behavior on her part that made them feel unsafe. So much so, they hired an armed guard and filed a restraining order to keep her at least 2 miles from the building. The co-CEO has denied any wrongdoing, but her actions seem to give clues to her true nature. Nancy Silvercl demanded the suit be tossed out because, quote, white guys aren't members of a protected class, unquote. If reports are true, she also brought in Hell's Angels in an attempt to intimidate employees and asked repeatedly about the handgun and 750 rounds of ammo her husband kept at the office. She was also accused of stalking both employees and their families. The CEO had this to say, quote, I have not had any interactions with these people, she said. It's all very puzzling. I don't know what's going on in their heads, unquote.
To be fair, you can't blame her for calling everyone penis. Her name's Silvercl.
No, but I mean, from what I understand,
Sigh.
she's calling these people penis or whatever. Hey, penis, get this shit done. I guess I don't know. It's some crazy stuff.
I
Discuss?
think I alluded to that when I did the response to the BuzzFeed misandry checklist, when I did the misogyny checklist, because I think they included that in it. You know, they said, well, obviously, in their joking manner, that it was so misandrous to call a man penis. So I said, fine, you know, it's must be terribly misogynist for particular, government representatives that call women vaginas. So apparently it's wrong on one side, but not on the other, yet again.
One of the interesting things is that when I was attending the NOW conference a couple of years ago, Eve Ensler ran up on stage to massive, massive cheers to give her keynote address, the author of the Vagina Monologues, and the originator of the V-Day, Valentine's Day, 1 Billion Rising movement, okay? And the very first sentence out of her mouth was, "Are the vaginas in the house?" And cheers everywhere. And then, any vagina-friendly men in the house? And I'm thinking, you're referring to men as persons and women as body parts. But, in her defense, she seems to be very attached to the whole vagina thing. She, at another point in her speech, said, "Deep down in my heart, in my soul, in my vagina, I know, blah, blah, blah." So, clearly, a vagina is, to her, more than just a sexual body part, a reproductive body part. It's part of her knowing, her way of knowing things.
It's the seat of the soul.
It's the seat of her identity as a woman, or as a person, even. And so, you know, like, I will say that feminists can be just as guilty as anybody else of essentially calling women cunts.
Okay, I want to add something to this.
Go on, Allison.
This is from The Hairpin. Actually, I'll roll up and see who this is by. The Hairpin by, oh God, another impossible name. Juliana Escobedo Shepherd. Juliana Shepherd. So this is what Juliana Shepherd from The Hairpin, I believe a feminist publication, had to say. Quote, "If the accusations against Nancy Silberkleit are true, it's pretty appalling and untenable. No one deserves to be treated poorly in the workplace, especially fearing for their personal safety. And yet, there's something about Silberkleit's story that resonates, a kernel of something under there we can understand. It's not just her alleged penis, penis, penis moment sounds like a scripted montage from a feminist movie that counters the mainstream image of the glamorous woman sexual harasser. A sort of workplace answer to teeth. Silverkleit's story resonates with women because we have seen so much of the behavior that one suspects might lead up to an outburst like the penis incident. Those of us who have been subject to workplace discrimination, harassment, or otherwise have felt the pressure of having to work triply hard and clock longer hours and be eminently smarter than our male counterparts, only to watch them receive the peach appointments and assignments and paychecks. We have felt the humiliation of our ideas being discounted and of being spoken over in meetings. 1 in 5 of us has been subject to unwanted advances, to objectification, and other forms of sexual harassment. It culminates into a kind of fury that can bring out our basest, most animal instincts. The echo of penis, penis, penis resonating in our brains, if not out of our mouths." End quote.
Oh, that's just sad. That's just sad. Okay, she did not earn her position as CEO. She inherited it from her dead husband. Okay, so number one, there is nothing to say that she's even remotely qualified to be the co-CEO of Archie Comics, right? Number two, are we really excusing this kind of behavior because, she suffered some microaggressions while on her period? What?
Well, we don't even know. We don't even know. This is just the typical feminist cant. As soon as a woman does something bad, something, we got to start excusing her.
But here's the thing, okay? Here's the thing. Now, I can totally understand if she just lost her husband, right? And then she's given a position of responsibility in this large sort of corporation that she wasn't necessarily interested in having, but maybe the power's going to her head, plus she's got all kinds of emotional turmoil and loss, and she's also getting older, and the older you get, the less inhibitions you have, oddly enough, as far as I'm who I am, deal with it. Okay, and, so, I mean, I can sort of understand, I can understand how a woman who was a kind of prim and proper, elementary art class teacher or whatever it was that she did. She was like a teacher of art classes in school, right? School teacher. I can understand how a woman would, or I can envision a woman with that background and that history behaving like this. I absolutely can. I can see it. It seems out of character, but still realistic given the circumstances, right? Like, I can believe the allegations against her. That doesn't excuse it. That doesn't mean that I'm saying, well, okay, well, she's been thrust into a situation that she wasn't expecting by the sudden or prolonged or whatever death of her husband that was probably really horrible and all of these things, right? Like, so I can understand how a woman might behave out of character or might be behaving in this way, in this circumstance. I can understand that, like, in the sense that it's believable to me. But I'm not about to make excuses for her, right? Like, no, her situation makes it believable. It doesn't make it excusable.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can have some compassion for her situation while saying, well, you can have compassion for anybody who's acting out in this manner, men and women, but at the same time, that there still has to be boundaries drawn, and the way that she went about, if you go into the comments of this particular thread, first I want to pull out one concept that this feminist group has developed, which is the idea that because of male privilege, men don't deserve legal protections. Oh. So in other words, they use a abstract concept that they made up to excuse very real discrimination in law and society against men. And I just find that it's how do they ram so much doublethink into their brain? It's amazing. And the other thing I wanted to point out is they then went on into a long and completely ignorant discussion of prison rape. And they said things like, prison rape, this is from Pistol Packin' Mama, prison rape affects more men than women because many more men are incarcerated in the U.S. than women. But in terms of prison percentages, the idea there's a huge difference is questionable at best. And then Danzig, and I'm just pulling out some quotes here, Danzig with a exclamation mark point says that in prison, it's the prison staff do not prey upon male populations in the way they do female populations. This is such base fucking ignorance. And this is why it really pisses me off that feminists are in control of this narrative around sexual harassment and sexual abuse, because they're so pig ignorant. The statistics indicate that staff on prisoner violence and sexual abuse is worse in male prisons. It's worse, with most of it being done by female staff. And if they had actually even looked at the statistics, they would know this. But they just go off of this completely baseless, not grounded in any sort of reality, idea that women are always the biggest victims no matter fucking what. And that's the same thing you see in the main article. Silvercl has to be a victim of calling men penises because she's a woman. It all comes down to that. And
yeah. Hilarious, because my boyfriend's just been involved in a discussion on Reddit in sort of a debate space between feminists and MRAs about who gets killed more in war, right? And of course the feminists were like, well, okay, so more men are killed in combat, but afterwards, women are much more, the more women end up dead, right? After the conflict or from things like disease and famine and things like that, right? And they demanded so much proof. And here's the thing. The only study that my boyfriend could find regarding actually trying to detail incidents in war and sort of as war as the causal factor of other things, indirect deaths, right? The actual study said, we've looked at all of the data, but none of the data on indirect deaths is very clear, right? And what little there is indicates that men die more from that too, right? Males die more from that too. And then they added at the end of the study, however, some other studies that do not focus on indirect deaths have concluded that women are more likely to die from indirect causes due to war. Even though those studies didn't actually study that, they just kind of just said it. And that's where the attention needs to be. But he actually, I told him, I said, just go and look up the census data from Bosnia, go look up the census data from Rwanda, go look up the census data in Cambodia immediately following Pol Pot, right? And that was the really damning one. The population in Cambodia after Pol Pot was 80% women. In Rwanda, it's 70% women, right? But women are still the primary victims of, indirect causes, the indirect deaths of women are still the bigger victims here. Getting to live, I guess, means you're the bigger victim. Like, you literally have to shove it in their faces that, in Bosnia, 65% women immediately following that crisis.
But I think we do have to move on.
Yeah.
I'll let Rachel sign off on that particular directive.
Yeah, I think that overall the problem, or what I think gives us a hint to what kind of woman she is the fact that she did say, well, I think we should just toss this out because men should not be protected. I'm like, really? Really? I don't know. But I think we're going to go and move on to Sailor Moon and Maleficent. All right. And because I happen to be the resident expert on Sailor Moon mythos, I think I'll go first. I'll try not to go too off on a tangent, but we'll go. Is Sailor Moon feminist? With the arrival of the new Sailor Moon anime, fans were asking a myriad of different questions. The one traveling through Tumblr was if Sailor Moon was feminist. Others, convinced that it was, asked if it was feminist enough. It was a question that I had been asking myself, though the answer is probably not one feminists are wanting to hear, which is that it's downright ridiculous to attach labels to fictional characters because they belong to everyone. Sailor Moon as a story and a character is not even remotely political. It is instead the story of a young woman growing up in extraordinary situations. At its heart, it is the story of girls continuously sacrificing every ounce of normalcy from their lives to guard their planet from evil entities. The message is that of love, compassion, understanding, teamwork, and self-sacrifice. Most important is the message that social justice warriors miss, which is that with great power comes great sacrifice. Too often, the ones complaining about the shows miss this important lesson. They are more concerned with the girl power aspect of the show, and tend not to notice how much this tends to rear its ugly head. Though the main characters are powerful, they suffer for it. The story is often centered around the protecting of an all-powerful crystal, and while it has the power to save and heal the planet, it also has the power to destroy everything that falls... it has the power to destroy everything if it falls into the wrong hands. So these ordinary girls sacrifice their lives, their goals, and dreams to save the planet. As a result, they become distant from friends and family to the point that it even becomes a plot point in Act 2 of the comics. Sailor Moon's future daughter causes problems as a result of the strained relationship between her and her mother, who is seen as being almost a goddess. She simply cannot relate to her, and as a result sets events in motion that put the future in a state of peril. The story is one of constant sacrifice. It teaches girls that with all things there are trade-offs. We alone can choose the people we want to be. We must choose the things that we are willing to sacrifice for our goals. Overall, the story is a good one. It is an unapologetic romance that is sure that to get feminist panties in a bunch. It is a fairy tale wrapped in Japanese and Western mythos. One guaranteed to brighten your day and make you believe in miracles once again. We'll talk about this a bit. I think what I was trying to get at is that they're all for, girl power, blah. But they aren't always concerned with the things you have to give up to attain your goals. And that there's always a trade-off with everything. You guys can respond how you feel.
Well, I'm surprised that, I was surprised that the social justice warriors would claim that as feminist.
Yeah, I think the first time I came in contact with these crazy girls saying, "Oh my gosh, this is the most feminist thing I can think of. I mean, how can it not be feminist?" I'm like, really? It belongs to everybody. And to be honest, a lot of these girls are longing for traditionalism or these little simple normal things when they're being forced to give all those things up instead to save the planet. And they're saying, but I mean, social justice warriors they are focused with empowering what they feel to be the weak and downtrodden, but they don't often understand the price of power.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if it would be a story that would resonate with them because it's really about sacrifice for the benefit of all. And I don't know, like it defeats me. I don't know how that's feminist because feminism is usually about putting yourself first. If you're a woman, it's about your entitlements, your what you can do anything with your life you want. If anybody impinges upon you, it's their fault. You got to step up to the plate, be a strong, independent woman, and bitch slap them out of your life, that kind of thing. It's not really about the sacrifice that comes with power and the requirement to protect others and take responsibility. So I'm not sure. And the other thing is that it's like you see with the Nancy Silverclit, I'll never be able to not call her that now, situation. What's the feminist go-to? The feminist go-to is to describe her not as powerful, but as powerless. Not as responsible, certainly not as responsible because she has power to actually to actually protect her, those people who are those men who are under her supervision, under her power. Certainly they don't think that it's her obligation to protect them, much less actually, or even just protect them from herself or her own behavior. I mean, they have this sort of idea that if a woman has power, it's almost cathartic for them if she uses it against men. So if Sailor Moon was feminist, Sailor Moon, I guess, would have used her power to make men feel helpless and hurt as a revenge fantasy for everything that men have done. Not protect men, but hurt them. And that would have made feminist or Sailor Moon feminist.
Oddly enough, though, there is a great amount of love towards men in Sailor Moon. A lot of people like to say a bunch of crap, but I think that actually comes from the Sailor Moon dub, which really kind of, I guess a lot was lost in translation, and the actual anime that came out of the 80s and the 90s, which got a little weird and shifted away from a lot of the characterization. But one of the things that is the ongoing theme throughout is that love and compassion, regardless of gender, is the thing that drives human beings and makes them the best version of themselves. That when people are driven to help others out of love and not out of a goal to move towards a state of power or accomplishment, that it's the better choice. In fact, oftentimes what happens towards the end of nearly every story arc is that Sailor Moon is forced to make hard decisions on her own because everybody else has been removed from her state. Because we do have the situation where Tuxedo Mask is coming in and saving her, but what happens towards the end of the story arc is she's forced to be on her own. Everybody else has been taken out, and she alone and her love for other people is what drives her to be able to accomplish everything, to save everyone. And which is a great message, that you should always come from that place of loving and understanding and compassion for others. Even if they're complete assholes.
Yeah, well, they don't have to change your essential nature, right? If you choose to be in that place, then it doesn't matter how other people act. You choose to act out of what you are rather than react to what they are. But you know what? I think that this, because the other hosts are not really Sailor Moon fans. Like I didn't mind the totally butchered anime that they put out, but that may have been, memories from my teenagehood.
Yeah, I had really fond memories of it going in when I was like 13 years old. But watching them now, after reading the comics, is a completely different experience because you realize that it's about 85% filler. And they actually created... the second season was something that they completely made up. It was not canon at all. They completely made the whole Doomtree story arc, and the whole arc in the first season where you've got to find the rainbow crystals and Moonlight Night, that totally was not there at all. All of that crap was made up that they shoved in there to make the series longer. And if they had focused just on the basic storyline, it probably would have been a tighter show. It probably would have been a lot better. But yeah. They really did make completely useless episodes, and I'm really hoping that because the new series is going to focus on the comics, that it's going to be tighter, it's going to be gorgeous like the comics, and it's going to get darker and more plot-driven.
Yeah, that would be a good thing. So maybe not quite as dark as something like Attack of Titan. Holy shit.
Yeah, it gets pretty dark, though.
Really?
Yeah, Sailor Moon in the comics, holy fucking shit. It gets dark. All I can say is I don't want to do any spoilers for people who are going to be watching the new show, which is going to be showing up every other week on Crunchyroll and a couple of other things. Like Go Anime does it, and I think it was Neon Alley that they're streaming it. I think they stream live, but they also have the subbed version, the English subs up, not long after it airs in Japan. So it's going to be every other week. There'll be a new episode coming out if you guys want to catch up on that.
Okay.
But I think it's 26 episodes that we've got over the next couple months.
We should probably talk about Attack of Titan.
Oh, we should, definitely.
Yeah.
That's
oh my
show.
God. That's the only show that really it just captures the helplessness of war. At least in the first half of the series, it's just horrifying. Cheerful stuff. We need to talk about cheerful stuff. So
yeah, let's move on to Maleficent.
Oh, so cheerful.
Because rape culture is so cheerful. Is everybody else here ready for that? Do we still have Crystal and Jess and everybody else?
Okay, well, by rape culture, do you mean it's a fictional story?
Yes,
it's fictional, metaphorical rape culture. Okay, anyway.
Excellent.
Maleficent is an unapologetic pandering to a feminist audience. It is the story of a strong, capable fairy cut down by the selfish actions of men, furthering the idea that if a woman, even a villainess, does something wrong, a man is somehow to blame. The fairy Maleficent is drugged and betrayed by her primary love interest, abusing her in what writers have called a metaphorical rape. However, in cutting off her wings, he does two things. He furthers his own ends, but he also saves her life. Because prior to this action, the king had called for her head. By crippling her, he protects her from the soldiers that might have come to kill her. In fact, he could have killed her, but he didn't. Now, instead of making the king a similarly sympathetic character, they, of course, portray him as a rapist. Because the fact that he was a lonely orphan trying to make something of himself in a world that will hand him nothing somehow makes him less of a sympathetic character than a fairy who has everything magically handed to her.
Oh.
So the moment she faces a legitimate life obstacle, she throws a hissy fit and curses an innocent child, because, as we all know, the sisterhood is all about worthy victims. So Maleficent is allowed to hurt countless people because she was metaphorically raped, but the king gets to be painted as a bad guy for seizing power after a lifetime of hardship and saving her life. Maleficent has never had to go hungry. She has never had to suffer. When she does suffer, she wants everyone else to suffer along with her. Arguably, the one redeemable feature of this movie is in the fact that Maleficent does eventually realize what a bitch she's been for the last 17 years. Better late than never, I guess. She tries to reverse her curse, but it doesn't work. Only through the love and compassion she has for Aurora can she break the spell. Which is kind of messed up when you consider that she keeps a raven as her personal slave and constantly uses him as a tool for her own ends. Oh yeah, and never mind the fact that the king goes insane with the guilt of his own actions and that she basically kills a mentally ill man after terrorizing him for years. Yeah, we hear almost nothing about that. So in reality, this is not a move to create more complex villains, but instead a shift of the focus to men, who of course can never be complex or feel pain. And hey, men are expendable, so no one will care if they die. It is basically a movie shifting blame to men, when the female protagonist abuses them when it suits her. Beyond the special effects and somewhat decent performances is the recycling of a story. It is in many ways a missed opportunity and does nothing but pander to the girl power demographic while reinforcing modern stereotypes. So much for the new modern Disney.
Mike,
Discuss.
Mike, get up here.
Hello, yes.
Yeah.
Right, first of all, it's very important not to get too Sarkeesian on things.
I
think
know.
You all know what that adjective means, right? And a lot of you might have seen Stephen Molyneux's review.
I think I get where you're going from. I know.
Right, obviously, he focuses a lot on Maleficent's choices as a character, and I couldn't stop thinking to myself, hang on, she's a bad guy. This is the story of a villain. That's its allure, right? So, of course, she's going to have some dodgy characteristics, even as a child. So I thought, would you be reacting this way to a male character? And in many ways, no. Han shot first. Not only are we glad that Han shot first, we demand that Han shot first, because everyone likes a bad boy, right? So in a way, I thought, maybe Maleficent is a test of does everyone like a bad girl? So I watched it. I tried to. And Stefan may have gone a teeny bit over the top, but not very far over the top. He's right. The point is, these cruel actions Maleficent takes aren't even portrayed as cruel. They're portrayed as either neutral or positively the right thing to do, right?
Righteous.
Protagonists are supposed to learn things from their mistakes, but she doesn't learn a fucking thing from her mistakes. The narrative doesn't even portray them as mistakes. The film seems to be recommending that all the little girls watching it should do what Maleficent does. And what she does is pretty sick. What
I'm gathering happens is that the world conforms to the point where her mistakes actually transmogrify into appropriate choices.
Okay,
Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to say it.
Yep.
I'm going to say it. Mary Sue Maleficent.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Go ahead, Crystal.
Oh, what happens in the end? Okay, so I watched it, right, and I was like, okay, the one thing that I could find that I was like, oh, this is an interesting type of thing, this is the way I saw Maleficent and Sleeping Beauty. It looked like the cognitive dissonance, the two characters became like archetypes of the cognitive dissonance within women or feminists or whatever. Like Maleficent, the pained one who uses her pain instead of healing and just completely uses it as an excuse to bring bullshit onto the world. She takes the whole, she's like, oh, well, he used my wings to become a king? Oh my God. And she supposedly says, oh, well, that's terrible to want to be king and all this stuff. But then she becomes the dark queen of the entire land and decides to torture everybody. Then, the way I saw Sleeping Beauty was, she was born and this little babe or whatever, was this little spark of heart, like Sleeping Beauty being the metaphor for heart, You know, and as Sleeping Beauty grows, and then her relationship with Sleeping Beauty, like, oh, her heart's coming back to life. So that was the only dynamic that I found kind of fascinating. However, the rest of the movie just shits on that entire metaphor because it's all built on man bad. And the characters, you know, you see them in the king's, everybody who works for the king, they're like, oh, these evil men, rah. And and exactly, the king is tortured the entire time. Meanwhile, he saved her life. He saved her life, and she tortures him. So it's interesting, because of her perception and her inability to process whatever pain she decided to do, she used that pain to hurt everybody else, which is pretty common in our society. Women who feel the need to use their pain for everyone else. So Maleficent is like the radical feminist wet dream. So anyway, she, you know, throughout the movie, she does her thing, blah, 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 and she's trying to find redemption, but exactly, no one says, hey, what she did was complete shit and she should have never done all of this stuff. Then the king dies after being tortured for his entire life, losing his wife and being detached from his child. And at the end of the movie, she's called both a heroine and a villain. She was never a fucking heroine. Never! She was an asshole. She was an asshole who never said, hey, you know what? I'm in pain and maybe I should get through whatever I feel is painful and stop being an asshole to everybody and forcing my pain, everybody to experience my pain. It's justified in the movie. The death of the king is treated as, oh, this is exactly what needs to happen. So it's this whole story that the only way that women can get through to their reuniting their heart or healing is by the suffering of men, is by treating men as they are the enemy. And on top of this, yes, she enslaves a man. And this is completely considered as acceptable. There's not enough. And of course, true love, again, can only be when Maleficent, the prince was completely cut out of being true love. You know, a man can have nothing to do with the love. He can't have anything to do with breaking the spell or anything because it's not valid. It was so much nonsense in one movie. Okay, I'm done.
And what makes? Sorry, Jess, go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, is it just me, or are they implying that only women can experience true love, but men just can't comprehend it, can't experience it? Is that what I'm trying to proceed from that?
They did that in Frozen, too. They did that in Frozen, too.
Yeah, they did. They're completely cutting the prince out, because throughout time, the prince comes in, and the true love's kiss is when two people find each other, and they're like, oh, it broke the curse, whatever, it's a story, whatever. But now the man has no meaning in love whatsoever. He cannot possibly be a part of true love. So, yeah, they did that in Frozen as well. So now they're completely cutting out men from the process of the love process. Well, no valid love there.
Of course. I mean, okay, so if the prince awakens her from, years of sleep by kissing her, that's pretty rapey.
Okay, all right. I'm just going to... Mike has been struggling to talk, so come on, Mike.
Yeah. Get
in here.
Well, there's lots of things you can do with the allegories of what what the story's about, and that's sort of what makes it all the more disturbing about how influential it could be to little girls. Because in some ways, it's quite obviously a story about losing one's first love. I say obviously. Stefan went several layers deeper than I'm going, but this seems to be the obvious layer: the first breakup. It's common for boys, probably a lot more common for girls. The first time they fall in love hard, and when they break up, and they do break up, they fall very hard indeed. And that's the scene with losing the wings. The wings are her virginity. He takes them and he fucks off. That's what it looks like to a scorned first love. He took my virginity and he fucked off. That's all it was, right? And what's the first thing Maleficent does after that? She casts a spell on the first downtrodden beta she can find and takes his wings and makes him her slave. And at no point does the narrative suggest this isn't something we should be encouraging in young girls. Right. Not to mention the murderous rampage she goes on after that, which frankly could represent anything. The moral of the story seems to be, girls, in the highly unlikely event that your first boyfriend doesn't work out for some reason, It'll be totally awesome if you fuck a bunch of people's lives up because of it. Do whatever your heart tells you, because your heart is totally thinking straight at this point.
Oh my god! You know, there's a line that I had to write down, because when the king says this to Maleficent, it really struck me, and I was like, "Holy fucking shit! You got to be kidding me!" He says to her, "How does it feel to be a fairy creature without wings in a world where you don't belong?" And I was like, fuck my life! Are you fucking kidding me? So this is exactly what they're injecting into girls. You are a fairy little creature who is magical, but you don't belong here and nobody wants you. So it's like this, you don't belong here, you're above everybody else, but your wings, you know, it was just such putrid shit. And it was, of course, no secret that the king, I was like, oh, the patriarchy, how fucking, you know, how much fucking feminist is this? Let's overturn the patriarchy. It was so vile.
And everywhere, Tumblr feminists flip their shit because a rational person said you're not a special snowflake.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it really is a mess across the board. And what you do see though is Sleeping Beauty is the quintessential virginal girl, and on the other end you have Maleficent, and she is the archetype of the destroyed, the damaged goods, so to speak, and only through them, the sacred feminine, drawing them together, can they break the spell. Right. This is like a gynocentric clusterfuck, and you really did see the king acting incredibly out of character, because what you did see with Stefan initially was that he didn't want to gain power. He absolutely did. But the thing about it is she doesn't know what he's been going through his entire life. He's an orphan. He's had to starve. He's had to suffer. He's had to work his way up, scratch from the bottom up. And she doesn't give a fuck. She's got wings. She's got magic. She can do anything, okay? She's got all this fucking power. She can't conceive of how he suffers.
Right.
And there's even a moment where the narrator says that she didn't understand the harshness of man or whatever. She didn't understand their hatred, but that she was about to find out. I don't think she does understand. I think that she goes throughout the entire movie not understanding how other people suffer, or she's only thinking about how she suffers.
Of course.
Well, here's
she
the
only
thing.
lives in her perception.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, so she, and I actually, full confession, I watched about 12 minutes of this, and I just couldn't give a shit. Like there was absolutely nothing in these characters that was at all compelling. But I watched and the reality is that you're right, Rachel. She had everything handed to her. She was, just by virtue of birth, royalty.
Yeah. And
she didn't know a moment of suffering.
We don't even hear about her parents or her background. She just exists straight away.
Well, I mean, no.
Thing.
Actually, we did find apparently her parents died or something. Yeah.
All right. So.
But still, she lives in this apparent paradise where everything is provided for her, including an army, and there's absolutely no sense of struggle. And the only point in time where there is any kind of struggle, she turns into a villain. So what is this supposed to... If you take the vagina out of it, right, you take the penis out of it, you got one character who struggled all of his life probably just to provide for himself. And like a lot of people who've struggled all their lives to provide for themselves, he's a little bit focused on getting the power to provide for himself in the future, which being a king would give him. And we have another character who's just basically spent all of her life with a silver spoon, or that's the neutral person's life, with a silver spoon in his or her mouth. And the first act that this person, one of the first interrelationship acts between these two characters, is the person with the silver spoon in their mouth takes away something that the other person could have used to improve their life.
Yeah.
And for no really solid reason. Like just, oh, well, these stones belong to the lake, period. That's where they belong. And so you can't have them, starving orphan. And and it's like, you imagine, like, no, let's actually switch the genders. Let's imagine it's the fairy king. Oh, starving orphan girl. No, you can't have this. This goes into the lake. Sorry, piss off. Now is this character very sympathetic? No, absolutely not. Because they never extend themselves to care. She's an asshole. She's an unmitigated asshole. And then when she suffers, she
makes everybody else suffer.
Everybody else suffer. This is
see the fairies and everything? Like, they were so sad. They're like, oh, now we're all afraid of her. I mean, whereas before they were just really happy to be in her presence, but now she's like a mega douche. She's gone from being regular asshole to being fucking mega douche.
Right.
And now they all have to sit there and fall in line underneath her and bend to her will because she has to suffer for like the first time in her fucking life.
Which makes no fucking sense, because the whole time she's like, oh, he's a king. Well, then if she's so against this, but then she turns into the queen. The evil queen. So I don't know, that made absolutely no sense.
It doesn't make any sense until you apply the heuristic of vagina good, penis bad.
All right.
But I quite like the format of making just a movie about a Disney villain. You know what we need? A movie about the hunter that shot Bambi's mother. That'd be fucking awesome.
Oh, shit.
And how he was just misunderstood and, ruining people's lives because,
he was starving. His kids needed food and, and this was the first deer he'd seen in ages. And, that's a good story right there.
I love it.
I'd watch that.
Thank you.
Okay, but I think Crystal, stop me if I'm wrong. I think it's winding down now. Maybe Chris or actually Rachel. But usually at this point in time, Crystal says something, and then we end it.
She's gonna say the thing.
Say the thing, Crystal. Say it.
What thing?
The thing.
Oh, that kills people. Well, when you crave hands. I had a hunger that only hands could satisfy. God. Because I'm building a meat dragon, and
Okay.